When she recognized the research technician who worked at the hospital did she slowly exhale. He was right on schedule, she realized, mentally calculating the time. She passed him whenever she left school at 5:30, which wasn't more than once or twice a week, and then always on random days. It was one of the things Sam Loomis had taught her. The more varied her existence, the more elusive a target she'd be. Not that she was a creature of habit. She'd been far more impulsive in the past, when she was driven by the demons within to prove herself as a journalist. Now, though, as a high school English teacher, she led a life more conducive to order. Strange, she mused again, how things had changed. The research technician passed on the opposite sidewalk without a word, but then he'd have no reason to recognize Carly. She, on the other hand, had Sam, who had carefully checked out not only her neighbors, but the people they'd passed in those first few weeks when he'd been by her side walking her to school in the morning, then home at night. He'd been a godsend, given the circumstances. Now, though, she was on her own, and free to imagine all kinds of villains in pursuit on a dark and deserted street. But it wasn't really deserted, she chided herself. There were close-set houses on one side, low apartment buildings on the other, and there were cars lining both curbs as evidence of people nearby. Surely, if she were in danger, she would only have to scream, and there would be any number of people to help. Or so she hoped. In less optimistic moments, she wondered if these urban dwellers would come to the aid of a woman they didn't know. She wondered if, with their doors and windows shut tight, they would even hear her. When, silhouetted against the lights on Memorial Drive, the rounded turret of her building came into view, she felt momentarily lightened. Then she heard the crescendoing thud of footsteps behind, and her calm vanished. Without thought to her heels, the broken sidewalk, or the heavy bag that pounded her side with each stride, she broke into as steady a run as she could manage. Looking neither to the right nor the left, she sprinted forward with single-minded intent. Her breath came in short, painful gasps, intermingled with soft moans of fear. Through the wisps of auburn hair that had blown across her face, she saw the sanctuary of home drawing closer, closer. Ignoring the stitch in her side, she ran on, nearly there now, all but tasting refuge. It was only after she'd turned in at the stone courtyard that, without breaking pace, she dared a glance over her shoulder. The look was ill-timed. She'd barely spotted the jogger who had turned onto Memorial Drive when she collided headlong with a firm wall of muscle. Terror-filled, she caught her breath in a loud gasp and would have fallen on the rebound had it not been for firm fingers gripping her arms. One part of her wanted to scream. The other part recalled what Sam had told her. "You're Carly Quinn now," he'd said in that soothing voice of his. "Stay calm. Whatever you do, if someone approaches, don't make the mistake of assuming that Robyn Hart has been found out. You've got to act with confidence or you'll blow your own cover. Carly Quinn has absolutely nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Remember that." It was easier said than done. Now, breathless from running and with the drum of her pulse reverberating in her ears, she raised panic-stricken eyes to those of her captor. He was large, tall and broad-shouldered, intimidating. In the relative light of the courtyard, she saw that he was dark. His full shock of casually mussed hair, the beard that stretched from ear to ear and parted only briefly at his lips, the worn sweatshirt he'd shoved up to the elbow. She knew she'd never seen him before. There was an intensity about him that she would not have quickly forgotten. Yet as a hitman he was questionable. His features were too gentle, as were, oddly, the fingers that seemed now to grasp her arms more in support of her shaking limbs than in any form of detention. And his voice, too, lacked the coarseness for which she'd steeled herself. "Are you all right?" he asked, frowning at the pallor that the courtyard lights illumined. Slowly, Carly came to her senses. His concern was as inconsistent with imminent attack as was the leisure with which he stood there holding her in the light, in view of any neighbor who cared to look. Panic yielded to caution, which was tinged with embarrassment when she forced herself to speak. She'd obviously made a foolish mistake. Yes, I'm fine," she whispered falteringly. As unwarranted as her alarm had apparently been, it had nonetheless taken its toll.